During President Biden's visit to Ottawa this past week, the U.S. and Canada agreed to a new immigration policy that closes a loophole that has allowed tens of thousands of asylum seekers to enter Quebec through this unofficial border crossing at the end of Roxham Road in Champlain, New York. Asylum seekers who cross now are being turned over to U.S. immigration agents, and most will be sent back to the United States.
Both of our countries believe in safe, fair, and orderly migration, refugee protection, and border security. This is why we will now apply the Safe Third Country Agreement to asylum seekers who cross between official points of entry.
Just hours after the deal was announced, Canadian border officials were unveiling a new sign warning migrants not to cross after midnight, when one last taxi pulled up to the end of Roxham Road, with a family desperately hoping to make it in time. Their driver urging them to run. They did, a man and a young child. Officials allowed the family through, although in the rush, they had to leave their bags behind. For 6 years, Roxham Road had become the crossing point for tens of thousands of asylum seekers looking to make a new life in Canada. But as the numbers grew, especially in the past year, Quebec was overwhelmed by the influx of migrants and called on Ottawa to renegotiate the Safe Third Country Agreement. The sweeping changes, closing the loophole and creating this mad dash to cross the border before midnight. Despite the closure, the migrants keep coming. A Greyhound bus from New York City pulls into Plattsburgh just before 4 a.m. Saturday. When the passengers bought their tickets and boarded the bus, Roxham Road was still open. When they got off, they learned it had closed. There were no taxis to take them the final few miles of their journey, and no instructions what to do next. Normally, Wayne Seymour would be driving these passengers to the border, but no longer. He says Canadian border officials told him and other taxi drivers not to.
They just dropped it on us. They said, don't come up after midnight. Well, you see right now I got children in my personal car, keeping them warm. I feel sorry for the women and children. These people are running for their lives. You know, they're scared.
A second bus arrives, and then at dawn, a third. Another taxi driver ignores the warning and takes a van load of passengers up to Roxham Road anyway. They cross into Canada. The process looks the same, but it's not. Canadian border officials say they will all be bussed over to the official border crossings in loophole and Champlain, and then likely sent back to the U.S. What happens after that is unclear. By Monday, the traffic at Roxham Road had slowed considerably, down from the 150 to 250 people a day in recent months.
I'm glad it's a relief. It's quieter.
Melissa Bishaw is a neighbor who lives just a short ways from the crossing.
Well, there's been a few cars coming up and down. Some people are being dropped off. Some did get turned away. Where they went, I have no idea. But yeah, it's slowed down and it's quieter.
Taxi drivers told reporters on Monday that when Border Patrol calls, they've been driving those migrants turned away back to Plattsburgh, and in a few cases, to Burlington, Albany, and even New York City. And North Country Assemblyman Billy Jones joins us now. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you as well.
So this supplement, as it's called, has been added to the Safe Third Country Agreement, which closes off Roxham Road as a route for migrants seeking asylum in Canada. Under the deal now, anyone who illegally crosses into Canada at an unofficial border crossing, like Roxham Road, most likely is going to get sent back to the United States. And yes, while this is a federal policy, this is a federal issue, is this a concern to you?
Yes, it is a federal issue, but it becomes a real local issue when they finally do come out with something, Canadian federal government, American federal government, and says, we are going to close this Roxham Road down. They come out Friday afternoon, effective midnight. Local officials and myself were very concerned on how that would affect our area. So I met with local officials, went up to Roxham Road this weekend, and they're very concerned about this. They're concerned about an influx of people here in the North Country with nowhere to go, and we don't really have the resources or means to deal with that. It becomes a local issue when federal policy comes about hastily like this.
And you mentioned hastily. This did come together at the end of last week during President Biden's visit. Any indication, any word from the federal government whether or not they're prepared to help the communities that they're returning these migrants to if they suddenly, have dozens of them who are continuing to come to the border hoping to cross at Roxham Road if they can and get turned back? Is there anything the federal government can do to try to help some of these communities?
I think there is. It becomes, we need the resources from the federal government. I think part of the frustration among local officials is there has been no communication. There's been nothing. Like I said, Friday they come up with a decision. We figured there was something coming, right? I mean, we could read the tea leaves for the last, since the president and prime minister met. But they come out Friday afternoon and say it's going to be shut down at midnight tonight. And we're all like, oh, really? Okay, what does that mean? And what are we going to do? Because it's not like asylum seekers and the migrants knew that was going to happen. We still have people coming to the border. And what does that mean for us locally in taking care of this situation? We should have got a heads up from the federal government. We should be getting resources from the federal government on what we can do to deal with this. We have migrants coming up here in the past, in asylum seekers in the past several months, ill-equipped for these North Country winters. So we're looking for the federal government to come up with resources to help us deal with this.
We saw right Friday night into Saturday, the migrants continue to come on the buses. If they do over the next few days or even the next few weeks, if they haven't heard the word that the border is closed, that they were hoping to cross there, if they continue to come, we do know that many of them use almost all of their resources in many cases, all of their money just to get to Roxham Road and to the border, and oftentimes have very little left. Is the worry that if they get turned back from Canada, that they'll end up in communities like Plattsburgh with very little money, not enough money for bus tickets or airline tickets to get back to where they came from, and that they may end up being stuck in communities like Plattsburgh?
That is the worry, right? That is the concern of local officials right now. But we still need resources. They still need resources to take care of this issue. That you just explained it. That is the concern here. And we're not equipped to do this. And certainly the migrants don't have the resources. By the time they finally get to that ultimate goal of crossing over into the border, they don't have any resources left. So it could possibly fall back to us. We're just looking for communication from the federal government, resources from the federal government on how we deal with this situation.
And if the federal government doesn't step up and isn't able to do that, is there anything the state can do to help in the meantime?
Well, we did allocate money, or the governor proposed allocating money to New York City to deal with their, that huge issue that they're having down there with migrants. So I would think with some convincing that we should be able to get some of those resources to the North Country to deal with this.
There are humanitarian efforts going on in the Plattsburgh area. Plattsburgh Cares, a group of volunteers, has been helping migrants up to this point who have been getting to the border and for whatever reason getting turned back, helping them find shelter and food and helping to arrange transportation for them. And have they reached out to you with any concerns or to ask for anything in particular to try to help them, or are they worried that they could be overwhelmed if we're seeing dozens and dozens of migrants continuing to come?
Well, briefly, I mean, we have talked. I have emailed with some of the members of Plattsburgh Cares. They are concerned as well because what we could possibly get and what we could expect. I mean, these are all this is a volunteer organization, correct? And they do a great job. They really do on doing what they do. But I don't think their resources run thin as well. And they will try and they will do as much as they can. But I don't know if this influx continues and this influx happens. I don't know if they would have the resources either.
It's a busy week in Albany. The state budget is due on Saturday. The Assembly and Senate have passed their own budget bills, their one-house budgets, and they do differ from Governor Hochul's. The Assembly's plan adds another $5 billion in spending, the Senate's $9 billion more, and both houses turned down a SUNY tuition increase, and neither supports the governor's proposal to make additional changes to the bail reform laws. Do you agree with the governor that these changes are needed?
Mostly the Assembly does reject all policy in our one house budget. Don't let that be a forewarning to what's going on right now here in Albany. Those discussions are taking place. I do agree with the governor that we do need changes to that. There's certainly going to be discussion on that in the coming days. I've always said that. I said it from right at the start when the law was enacted back in 2019, a law that I voted against, that we need to give judges more discretion, certainly when it comes to the bigger crimes and serious crimes, they need more discretion.
And what about the SUNY tuition hike? You met with SUNY Chancellor John King at the end of last week when he came to tour SUNY Plattsburgh. Did he say anything about the budget? Is he disappointed that both the Assembly and the Senate aren't supporting the tuition increase?
We didn't really get into the tuition increase. I'm against the tuition increase. I understand why, SUNY would want it. But certainly I think New York State needs to step up with more resources and more funding for our colleges and our SUNY system. And I've advocated for that in the past. I want to see them fully funded by the state.
What else in the Assembly budget that you pushed for is in there and that you're happy to see in there?
Well, I had a bill for capital funding for volunteer fire departments. I was asking for $100 million in our bill. We got a fraction of that. We have 10 million. The Senate put in 50. Hopefully we can get to a number in a final budget where it'll help our local volunteer fire departments out. They need, we need funding for equipment and their firehouses, their departments. The FMAP funding, big issue with our county governments. We need to make sure that the governor's proposal stays out of the budget. We did not have that in our one house. The Senate didn't put it in either. So it's a lot to deal with, but providing for our local North Country organizations, providing for our local governments, CHIPS funding, another important resource. We need to make sure that we get infrastructure dollars to help our local governments and our local roads. So there's a lot going on here. And I think we can come out and come up with a budget that helps address a lot of those needs of North Country residents.
Assemblyman Billy Jones, thanks a lot for taking the time to be with us.